So along with thyroid, there are 4 other hormones which get impacted. So I want to introduce you to four main characters. So we have leptin, ghrelin, serotonin, and cortisol. So carbs are actually involved at a hormonal signaling level. And this is a very crucial piece of information a lot of women are missing about carbs. It's not just calories, it's not just carbs hold 4 molecules of water. It actually helps how different parts of your body talk to each other. First, let me walk you through what each character does. So leptin basically is known as a satisfaction hormone. It tells your brain that we are satisfied, we are safe, and we can thrive now. The ghrelin is known as your hunger hormone. This is what triggers the enzymes in your gut, the hydrochloric acid, prepares your body to receive fuel and metabolize it. Now, the serotonin is known as your feel-good hormone. And this hormone basically gets released when you're doing, when you're working out, when you're engaging in productive activities, going out on a walk, playing with your dog. Serotonin is also responsible for supporting sleep and mood. It also helps with reducing of PMS flare-ups. And then we have the cortisol, which is nothing but your main stress hormone. And cortisol has a natural rhythm of, rising in the morning, and then towards the end of the day, it starts sort of, depleting. But cortisol typically rises when carbs are restricted. And then it stays elevated for much longer. It does not drop that easily, even during times when it should start dropping. So abnormality of cortisol function. Now, when you go low carb, leptin drops. So it signals your brain that you're in starvation mode. Secondly, ghrelin increases, which means you start feeling hungrier and hungrier, almost at a primal level. And more food obsessed. So this is when a lot of people notice food noise coming in. Serotonin starts dropping, which means that you have low mood, poor sleep, your PMS flares up. You're also a little bit more irritable. And your cortisol spikes. So this is when you feel more stressed in general, you feel wired, but drained, and your insulin resistance worsens. Now, as we already know that in the PCOS universe, your hormonal balance is already fragile. Cortisol is 30% higher than normal, insulin is 30% lower than normal. So think about this. When you go low carb, you're already signaling these hormones to behave weirdly. And in the PCOS universe, things are already off. So it's kind of a double whammy. So it tends to amplify every single symptom, and not in a good way. So this is why a lot of women tend to report that when they go on a low carb diet, the first thing that disappears is their period. I don't know if you've heard of this, but in the bodybuilding universe, when women kind of lose body fat to compete on stage for physique competitions, they typically report something called as amenorrhea, which is the loss of a period, especially when they are at very, very low body fat percentages. And this is because since they need to get to that level of stage lean, which is like a single digit body fat percentage, they kind of need to do it quickly. They need to do it in a 12-week or a 14-week period, because typically that's how they prepare for competitions. And the first macronutrient that goes is carbohydrates. And when carbohydrates are dropped, as I just discussed, a lot of your hormones get impacted. And because of which, the first thing that they lose is their period. So I had a client who actually decided to follow that. She went on an 800 calorie diet because that's what some online macro calculator told her to do. And she was promised that if she does this, she will lose 2 kilos per week. And she was blown away. She's like, wow, let me do this. She actually stopped after 2 to 3 weeks. She lost a total of 3 kilos, but that's not it. That's not it. She lost her stamina. She lost her period. And guess what? 3 months after she stopped her diet, she still didn't have her period. So her hormones, before she started this whole low carb 800 calorie thing, were probably like this. They were balanced. And then because of this strict extreme diet, they became like this. And guess what? It's very easy for hormones to go this far apart, this out of balance, but it's very difficult. It takes a lot of strategic planning with nutrition, workout, sleep, and patience, of course, for that to come back to normal. So while she lost her period because of 2 weeks of dieting, what I'm trying to tell you is that it took her 3 to 5 months for her body to feel safe again to actually naturally ovulate. So you understand one thing, that the body needs enough energy to do pretty much everything, right? And that's why we have numbers like BMR, TEF, NEAT, like we talked about in the metabolism. But when you deprive your body of this fuel, the body starts trimming activities because it's like, look, we don't have enough energy for it. And so ovulation is one of those things that kind of takes a hit. Your body's like, we don't have enough carbs, we don't have enough energy, so we don't have enough fuel to make reproductive hormones. So here's what happens inside. When you drop your carbs too low, your hypothalamus gets a signal that there isn't enough energy to ovulate, to release an egg. So it reduces the output of GnRH, which is what actually triggers the production of the luteinizing hormone and the FSH hormone. Now, these are the two hormones that you need to ovulate. So if you have no ovulation, you don't have a real period. And then you have more irregular cycles. And because of that, if you're planning to conceive, you cannot predict conception. And to add to that, because of low carb, serotonin production also reduces, so PMS flares up. And then you could obviously have more inflammation that's happening because all of your hormones are now out of whack. So a lot of people usually do low carb because, they want to get their period back. But this is where it actually backfires really badly. So now most people think that doing low carb will mean direct fat loss.